So we have a lot to cover today, everybody. Let's get started.
Okay.
Les, this is what happened. Last time we recorded an episode, but then we had to delete the recording of the episode. Do you want to explain the drama that happened behind the scenes?
It was only a work between Aaron, you and I. Um, After we had left the live recording a couple weeks ago,
Mhm.
I had a really hard time falling asleep.
Okay.
So usually when that happens, I know something's bothering me, and I had to process what it was. And I think I kind of knew deep down that I just probably felt unsure about uh, some of the things that were discussed personally
Mhm.
from my end. And I think after sleeping on it, it was confirmed when I woke up that I just didn't feel like it was, my motives were not pure and to edify the viewers. So this is one of the challenges that I learned. It was like a lesson that I learned and how to be more cautious, especially because we were going live. I just couldn't pretend that people will actually be watching this. I think like normally I rely on the editing feature to take out those things that I wouldn't want published. And
Mhm.
I think I didn't feel like everything I said was completely edifying.
Mhm.
And I asked you your opinion
Right.
to not post on all the platforms. And then I think you had made the executive decision to just remove it to put me at ease.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it wasn't a drama. It was like wow, like a learning, a process of learning.
You're right. Yeah, no, you're right. I think that's a fair assessment of what happened. Yeah, and you talked about some of our motives behind the words that, or the conversation, right? Motives behind like what we're talking about and why. And
Right.
you felt that it was impure. And I appreciate you for sharing that here. And the reason why I think that we should bring it up, or why I think it's good that we bring that up, is because we value honesty here, right? I mean, that's really why we're having these conversations, is because we want to be honest with each other. And so if you and me are not being honest with our audience, I think that's, that doesn't serve the people well. I also value, just to use like words, like transparency, authenticity. They are like buzzwords in a sense, but I think it's true, right? I mean, we talked about this the first time we had our little conversation. We're not trying to necessarily like be performative here, but we are, trying to help and love people that watch this. And also, I think it's good for us personally as creators, right? As people that publish on the internet, to be real about what's going on. And so, Les, I really do thank you for that. I think that was a good move, and I appreciate you for telling me that too. Yeah, publishing on the internet is a hard thing, and it's difficult to go live and just to, I guess, put yourself on the line, right? I think
Yeah.
yeah, I think the rewards are great, but the risk is also high too, and so we need to be very careful that we're not just broadcasting and trying to, like, make ourselves look good, or just trying to create content. Um,
Right. For sure.
uh,
Yeah. The one thing, the personal take home for me
yeah.
is uh, having discernment when it comes to things I feel passionate about.
Mhm.
And I think in the last episode, or not episode, the last live recording with you,
Yeah.
I was speaking from a place more of like passion and emotion. And I
Hmm.
realized that sometimes it could blur the lines from thinking that it's like an actual biblical conviction.
Yeah.
But in my case, it wasn't
Mm.
like, and I was addressing it. It was more so like my personal experiences, but it wasn't, edifying to the church. It was just almost like my opinions, right? But
For sure.
I since I was logging in through the Walnut Women account, I felt like it was not a representation of what Walnut Women stands for.
Mm,
Now, if it's like my personal account and it's like this is how I want to represent myself, I feel like the stakes aren't as high. You know, this is
mm,
like my personal account, but I think anytime you're representing something that is bigger
mm.
or a little bit more public, those are some of the cautions I realize, like for me personally, just to guard and have discernment with.
Yeah, I think that's really good. For me, I think the takeaway for me was that as the host, I should be a little bit more in tune about the vibe that we're either creating or the vibe that, I'm getting from you as the guest, right? I think there were some areas where I was trying to, direct the conversation or ask you a little bit more pointed questions to see what was going on. But I think, my gut intuition was like, oh, something's a little bit off. I probably should have listened to that voice a little bit more and follow up with you. Good thing that you had enough, I think, personal, I guess, accountability, personal conviction to bring it up to me. And I think once you did that, then I sort of was like, yeah, that's confirming about what I felt. So yeah, sorry, Les, I didn't catch that at first go, but I guess we're both learning together, right?
Yep, it's a process.
Well, Les, thank you for doing this. You are on your personal account now, but I'm still on FCBC Walnut, so I guess we still got to be real here and represent. But the whole purpose for me and you getting together at 9:30 p.m. on a Sunday night is to do sermon review, sermon recap,
Yep.
sermon application, sermon response is what it is. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, let's do this. Gabe's sermon today, generous disciple makers in a consumer-driven age. November 13th, 2022. He's preaching from 1 Timothy 6:17 to 19. Everybody, you can find this sermon and all of our other sermons on our YouTube channel, FCBC Walnut. His main truth: make disciples by investing your riches into the eternal kingdom in such a way that makes Christ look more precious and valuable than anything here on earth. He gave, a couple applications, I think, centered, a lot around money, which is what we think about when we think about consumerism. But something that me and you texted about, which I thought was really insightful, is that you said how consumerism reveals how committed we are to Christ and his church. Can you elaborate on that a little bit and why Gabe's sermon made you think specifically about consumerism and commitment to Christ's church?
Yeah, it was a really convicting message. I was really blessed by it, and I think that he made a few points about consumerism, and I thought it was kind of like a heart check. He asked some questions like, how is this going to benefit me? And I think every time we think that way, it's we're looking for something that could come from a selfish motive. He also talked about how consumerism offers an escape for us when things become difficult. And he also said that when we have a lot of options, it increases, our preferences. And our preferences are not always like the best means of like making a decision, but because we have so many options, it's become such a normal part of how we make our decisions and choose our commitments. And I think the opposite of just thinking consumeristically is like to be committed to the church. And I think about commitment as something like that's really important to the church, to the local church body, because it, no matter what, like you're taking your ownership of like this group of people, you're going to claim it as your own, and you're going to love the church as if the church is your family, your spiritual family. And so across like any season or trial or challenges that the church might go through, you're not going to desert the church and find another church. Like
Yeah.
if you're committed, you're going to stay and love the church when she's sick or when she's in glory. And
Mm.
so I thought that that was a really important way to see, uh, you know, like what we think about our own church.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I think that was really insightful application that you made. Now, Les, you've been coming to FCBC Walnut for a really long time, and I think you've been coming
yeah,
in different seasons of your life too. Uh, yeah, I mean, we touched upon this before in the last real recording that we did, um, about how you've been here um, even when I was in high school. You've been here since I was in high school. Um,
maybe when you started college, I think.
Oh,
I
okay,
think
okay, okay. So yeah. Like really, really young though. No matter either way, it's when I was really young. Um, I want to ask you specifically if there are any seasons that you've had in your life when it was difficult to stay committed to the local body. And I think you know what I'm asking you here.
yeah. Um, like for sure. I started coming to FCC Walnut right at the turning point of my college graduation.
Hmm.
So I've gone through like my entire 20s and almost my entire 30s now. And it's I've gone through most of the big life transitions
Yeah,
at FCBC.
yeah,
And I came to FCBC, and when I first arrived, and we've had a lot of turnover with staffing, and we've seen a lot of people come and go.
yeah.
And for me in particular, in my age group, I've seen a lot of people leave as well for various reasons. And I I think that transitions in itself can be like a barrier
Yes,
because you know it's like you need like all your attention to make these transitions, and I feel like the church has been that stable place for me on Sundays where I can come back and find refuge under God and with the people of God. And so I feel like one, the transitions, it was definitely a barrier.
mm,
um, Young adulthood, it can be a barrier in itself. You have your full-time job, you have a lot of power and options to do things on the weekend.
yeah,
And, again, I really go back to the faithfulness of the former generations that has been tested over time. And our church is like almost 40 years old, and the
yeah,
people who had planted this church, they were like young adults too,
yeah,
20s, 30s.
yeah.
And they weren't like there was no way they could be consumers because they were like the leaders of the church.
Mm,
And so I think about what they went through while they were raising their kids. I mean, your family was probably one of those original families,
yeah,
Aaron.
yeah,
And I find a lot of encouragement that they did it, and they probably did it with less resources.
yeah.
So, when we started to find more, like it was a higher cost to make it to church because at the time we were living in Arcadia.
Yes.
So the drive was manageable, but once we started having kids, it was much more difficult. Um, Sorry, if you want to get into any of these, please feel free.
Um, yeah, I mean, you mentioned all these life transitions that you've talked about and how each transition is difficult. Um, how did you stay committed to FCBC Walnut? Like, what was it that made you say, "Hey, you know what? Even though life is getting a little bit harder, I'm going to stay committed to FCBC Walnut. I'm going to stay at this church. I'm going to make sure that I show up on Sundays." How did you do that?
Um, it is a process of working out your priorities.
Okay.
The priorities really reveal like where your heart is and what your
Hmm.
heart desires. And it's easy to make really busy weekend plans, and those plans are usually a priority because you have to plan them. But I think for Sunday morning service, that is definitely something we want to work up to and prepare for, because that's the one time of the week where we can physically presently receive like the spiritual food and experience the corporate worship. And so I feel like, I mean, why would we miss out on that?
Mm,
So that's one thing. And then being raised in a Christian home, I really feel like my parents showed us what that faithfulness looks like, and we literally never missed a Sunday. I don't remember missing church. We were always at church.
right, right.
It's an act of like how you prioritize your time, especially on the weekends. We really try not to exhaust ourselves on Saturday evenings,
Hmm.
but in fact, we make very specific preparations so that we're not late on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Les, you had uh, you have had trials in your life too, right? And so I want you to talk specifically about those trials and how did you work through that in terms of coming to church?
Okay. Well, I think the most recent trial that I personally had to go through was when I got really ill 2 years ago. It was right around the time of like the pandemic, actually 2020.
Yeah.
And while the doctors were trying to find a diagnosis for my symptoms, they found something else. They found cancer,
Hmm.
which really, by God's grace, unrelated to the symptoms I was looking to get treated for. So I felt like I had two separate health journeys. One was the one I was trying to, find answers for, and then here's, the cancer part. But by God's grace, I think He allowed for this to happen so that I can learn how to cherish Christ more. And I think it was almost like giving me the grace to have this spiritual, eternal perspective of what's really valuable.
Mm.
It was a turning point in my life. I missed 2 months of church because I wasn't able to make it, and it was around the time of my surgery. And now, being thyroidless, living without a thyroid, it has its own physical challenges, mainly with energy and just, overall sensitivities with things. It's really hard for my body to like adjust to just environmental stimulation.
Hmm.
So when I came back to church, we were in the parking lot.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I guess, like, in that sense, it felt like less pressure because you could kind of hide in your car
Right.
and service. But it made me really miss like the church, like the corporate body worshiping God, and my ability to do so was not there either, because I lost my voice for a year. So for like a whole year, I wasn't able to like physically sing and worship. So that was like really hard too. It made me
Yeah.
count like what all these things meant to me.
Um, it sounds like what you're saying is that you even through your health trials, you still saw the value of the local church. You still saw I guess, not what it can do for you, right? But you saw the purpose of what the church is. Is that correct?
Oh, I mean, it helped magnify what was actually valuable, and the
Mm,
things that are valuable are eternal, the things that can enter into heaven, and that would be the church, that would be Christ and His glory and His word.
that's good. Yeah, that's good. Um, Les, you are a mother, and I want to ask for your advice specifically about how. I mean, this is a trial for me, right? I mean, not compared to your health problems, but like getting my kids to church is
Yeah.
is is difficult. And so, what advice do you have for young parents in terms of prioritizing church and helping your kids see the value of it? Being the leader in your family, trying to get them to church. Can you help me with that?
Yeah. Yeah. I, I I mean, especially when your kids are from the ages like 0 to 5,
Yeah.
I would say really that is like a really hard time for parents because one, they're already adjusting to the transition of having, a baby in the family.
Yeah.
Um, Babies require like full-time help, and then when they get to the toddler preschool age, then you have struggles with the unexpected tantrums, moodiness, disobedience,
Yeah.
and just they can't listen, they can't follow through. So I mean, it's challenging, when we go out of the house on Sunday mornings. It's a really difficult task, and there have been struggles where I get really angry because it confronted, my value of being punctual. Like I don't like being late.
Yeah.
And it's hard. There's a lot of pressure, and I think that's why we backscale and say, well, what can we do to make that more Sunday morning transition easier? Is like to get our full nights of sleep,
Mm-hmm.
pack our food, and lay out our clothes
Mm.
so that like it is as seamless as possible
Mm.
on Sunday mornings. And again, like it's not like Aaron, it's not like we're the eldest of this church.
Right. Right.
There
Right.
are generations of parents ahead of us, and I just think that these people have been doing it for decades.
Right.
Been bringing their families, and I find a lot of encouragement from that. I find a lot of encouragement when I see other parents there, and I know secretly what they went through. But
Yes.
until nobody knows what it takes. But I think when you see them, you're kind of like relieved, like we're doing this together,
Mm-hmm.
and rain or shine, shoes, no shoes, we're gonna go to church. And actually, there was a times where we were considering whether we should, because of some like symptoms,
Yeah.
and like our kids who didn't want to miss that routine. I think like the kids really thrive on the just the expected routine that we're just Sundays is reserved for God, and I think they value that routine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think my encouragement is just that, this is the time where it's costly. It's costly. It's costing like our convenience. It's costing comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly would much rather snuggle in bed with my kids. But when we arrive, like that's seriously the only time and place where you get this gift. You don't get it on the weekdays.
Mm.
So
Yeah, no, that's good advice, Les, and you're absolutely right. We're not the first ones to have to go through this. I think that's always a good perspective to have. And a quick shout out to all the mothers out there, because I know that the mothers carry a very uh, big burden, I think, in terms of getting the kids ready and prepared. At least I know Jess does. Have you heard of this thing called the mental load, Les?
no, I haven't. What is
I'll
wait,
let
a memory thing?
sort of. It's just sort of like all the things that a mom like thinks of in terms of preparing her children like for the day.
Oh,
I'm sure that it can go, both ways, but most of the time I would say it's on the mom. Like, oh, we still got it. Like, what are we gonna eat for lunch? Like, what are we gonna do if we're gonna go somewhere after church? That type of
yeah.
stuff. Yeah, just
Oh,
stuff that runs through the mind in order to be prepared or to like, just anticipate what's gonna happen. Yeah,
I thought that was called the mom brain.
I may it might be the same thing. Yeah, mental load, mom brain. I think it's the same stuff. But yeah, Les, thanks for the tips. I think it's helpful. Anything else you want to talk about in terms of consumerism and prioritizing the church in terms of what we were talking about?
We covered a lot of it. I thought it was a really convicting message.
Mm,
Another thing, I just think when it comes to riches,
mm,
I see it as like God's means of how we can steward resources, and I think our church is really blessed. You look at the how everyone, readily steps in when there is physical need.
mm,
And I do think we can do more. as a church. We definitely have resources um, for many more.
Yeah. No, that's a good exhortation. Yeah. Do more. Everybody do more. And oh, here's something I thought Gabe mentioned fostering and adoption. And that's always something that I'm ready and willing to talk about, or something I want to be a little bit more
Oh, is
ready and willing to talk about that.
yeah, I'm for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
talk that with you.
yeah.
Where we are in our process of that.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Let's get caught up, Les.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can save that for next time. I do want to give a shout out to Joss, who asked one of the questions that we used the other time, and so I did not give her proper credit, and so I want to give her proper credit for asking us some questions. If anybody has any questions that you want to ask me or Les, you can talk to us in person. You can shoot us a text or an email, and we'll try to talk about it. And yeah, hopefully this podcast can be a little bit more interactive than what we normally do. Les, when's the next episode of Walnut Woman coming out?
Um, do you remember we don't have internet?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, right,
So
right, right.
that means that whole ministry has been put on hold for now. I did have several episodes lined up, and we had to
Right.
just postpone it until probably the new year. I'm so sorry, Aaron. Maybe this is God's way of saying I just need to rest.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Well, Les, I'm glad that you and me can hop on Instagram Live, and this episode will be on our YouTube channel too. So everybody, thanks for joining us live, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, Les.
Thanks, Aaron.